I think what's most useful with the piece is to hold really kind of three different components in your kind of mind at the same time, and then kind of reflect on them all. I know it's a bit long, but I think it's quite useful. I think the first component is the Coltan Wars. And in the Coltan Wars in the Congo, in the last kind of 15 years or so, there's about 4.5 million people have died. And the Coltan Wars are really for an ore that's mined. It's a shameful thing. It's mined by children. It's caused a lot of conflict, a lot of ethnic rivalries, and coltan is worth more than its weight in gold. And coltan is made into tantalum, and tantalum is in every mobile phone, PlayStation, and really at the heart of kind of telecommunications world and globalization. Now, so that's really the first kind of part of the story to hold in mind. The second part of the story to hold in mind is that because of all the conflicts, we have about 40,000 Congolese in London, and for a number of years we've been in contact with the Congolese and supporting Nostalgia and Booker, and Vincent Lutman, Kofi and Esther, who produce a radio programme twice weekly on Resonance FM in London. And what we did with them was they was interested to make some kind of cultural collaboration with us, and so we decided to develop a particular kind of telephone system with them. And they have this practice back in the Congo of a thing called pavement radio, or what's it in French? No, can't remember.
Trottoir?
Yes. Okay. So téléphonique trottoir. So we decided to develop the project in which, if the telephone was to call you, then it could tell you a story, and you could pass that story to a friend by typing in their number. And as the story was passed round, if you liked the story or you didn't, you could leave a comment, and those comments would be edited every 2 weeks into a small radio program. All of this is done in Lingala, so it's very much a private network. So that's really the second component, and that's grown out of this collaboration that we did, where we would look at the media system and media ecology of the Congolese, and then through dialogue derive a system that was appropriate to their needs and ideas about freedom of expression, or the lack of it. And then the third component is the history of telephones and telephone machinery. Like behind me here, we have a set of Stroger switches, and these switches have been replaced by the digital technologies for the telephones. And Stroger himself was a funeral director, and he lived about 100 years before the Coltan Wars, before the wars about telephony. And his rival's wife ran the plug board for the telephones like this, and so all the bodies went to his rival rather than him. So he decided to take 6 months off, and he designed these switches so that he could, people could direct dial, and he could get the custom. And what's really interesting is he designed these, and they were really successful because it meant you suddenly had dials on telephones. But then after about 6 years, he went back to being an undertaker. So the third part is really about kind of the replacement of this redundancy. And in the work that you see behind me, what happens is that this is tapping out the numbers of the server is calling in London. So every time the Congolese in London make a connection, that's tapped out on these switches behind me. It's a reconstruction of the switches. So this one is like, a full setup. The switches would look like this, but there would normally be about 300 or 200 or something like that. Whereas when we worked with Manifesta and the Illumix aluminium factory, there what we did was we actually found the telephone exchange in the building from 1938, and the material between Siemens in Berlin and in Belzano. And we pulled the system out, and then we worked with the person who actually used to engineer the switches all his life to restore it and to then work with do exactly the same thing, but on site specific. And then in London, we worked with the Science Museum to restore their telephone switches in order to play it out in the Science Museum. But we also worked with asylum seekers and young people in a school to create a new telephone network so that the young people could talk about